My sister exposed my $24 million net worth at New Year's dinner, then demanded I owe her everything. Hi, I'm Albert Keller, 34, and this New Year's Eve I found out exactly how much my family thought I was worth. Toast, my sister said, tapping her glass like a gavel. Let's be honest tonight. The room smelled like citrus cleaner and burned rosemary. It always did. My parents' house had a way of being spotless and tense at the same time, like a museum exhibit called Functional Dysfunction. They sat at either end of the long table, close enough to hold hands, but far enough apart not to have to. My sister, Laya, had the center seat. She always did. She wore red, of course, because Laya never missed a chance to center herself in every photo, every fight, every story. Me? My name is Albert Keller. I learned early how to take up less space. I folded napkins. I refilled drinks. I cleared dishes before anyone asked. I laughed at the right moments, and never too loud. I made myself convenient. Laya learned how to make herself inevitable. Dad raised his glass. New beginnings, he said, but he was already looking at Laya like he wanted her to approve of his choice of words. Then her eyes slid to me. Not warm. Not curious. More like someone noticing a loose floorboard they couldn't stop stepping on. So, she said, flashing her trademark smile, the kind that felt like being handed a grenade with the pin pulled. Let's talk about money. The clink of her glass echoed. Mom's fork paused midair. Laya always did this, pick the moment just before dessert to detonate something. The number wasn't supposed to exist at the table. It had arrived quietly, over years. Choices made in silence. Small, boring sacrifices no one clapped for. No lottery. No windfall. Just grit, patience, and paperwork. $24 million. Doesn't sound real when your whole childhood taught you your job was to support someone louder. Laya leaned forward. Tell them, she said. Tell them what you've been hiding. And just like that, the room tilted. The clock ticked closer to midnight, and I realized this wasn't going to be a toast. This was an execution. Dad cleared his throat. Once. Twice. Nothing came out. I lifted my glass anyway. It had a hairline crack near the base, something I noticed earlier but ignored. That's kind of my thing. Ignoring warning signs. Keeping the peace. The crack sang softly as it tapped the table. Albert, Laya said louder now. Don't make me do this. She was already doing it. I'm not hiding, I said, my voice steady, which shocked even me. I was living. She laughed. Sharp. Loud. Like I told her I was a magician now. Living? You let us split the bill at Thanksgiving. You let us buy your plane tickets. You let Mom hand you cash for your tires last fall. Dad shifted. Pushed his chair back. It scraped against the floor too loud. Is this true? He asked. But his eyes stayed on her, like he already knew who the protagonist of this family story was. I nodded once. Not in shame. In ownership. Mom dabbed her napkin at her lips. Her voice was soft. Careful. Why wouldn't you tell us? Because every time I spoke, I learned silence got me further. But I didn't say that. I just looked at the crack in my champagne glass. It had crept another millimeter down the stem. Laya leaned in. You owe us, she said. You owe me. That's when Dad finally opened his mouth. And I knew, before he spoke, what was about to come out. He wasn't about to ask how I made the money. He was going to ask how much of it was theirs. He didn't even have to say it. I watched the calculation land behind his eyes like a check being balanced. Well, he said, rubbing his jaw, family doesn't keep secrets like this. Laya pounced. Exactly. Family shares. She reached toward my glass, then paused, spotting the crack. Figures, she muttered. Even your glass is broken. Mom shot her a warning look, but it didn't slow her down. It never did. You know what this feels like, she said, pacing behind my chair now like a prosecutor with a mic. It feels like theft. Like you stole the life that should have been mine. That one stung, but only because it was so familiar. That I lived in her shadow, but she thought my light was stolen. I didn't take anything from you, I said. I built something. With whose help? She snapped. And that cracked the room wide open. My first job at 15, bagging groceries. The scholarships I'd layered like armor. The nights I slept in a broken-down Civic because coming home would have meant crawling. But none of that fit her story. Dad sighed. You could have helped us, he said, as if trying to meet me halfway. We've been supporting Laya through a hard year. A hard year. Meant 3 failed businesses and a yoga retreat in Tulum. Mom nodded. Already rewriting history to fit the new narrative. That money, Laya said, quieter now, could fix everything. And by everything, she meant her. I stood. My chair barely made a sound. It was 11:58. I didn't tell you, I said. Because I knew this would happen. Laya scoffed. Oh, please. No, I continued. You wouldn't ask how I earned it. You'd ask why you don't have it. Dad opened his mouth. Closed it. The crack in the glass finally reached the base. I set it down gently before it could fall apart. You're not better than us, Laya whispered. The clock ticked. Midnight loomed. I met her eyes. I never said I was. Midnight struck with a bang. Fireworks outside burst against the sky, light crashing through the windows like sirens. But no one at the table moved. Not even to say, Happy New Year. Laya clapped once. Loud. Well, she said. Here's to us. Dad finally found his voice. Everyone sit down. He was trying to reestablish order. Trying to put the fuse back into the firework. But when he looked at me, it wasn't with anger. It was confusion. Like he was seeing someone he didn't recognize sitting in his son's seat. Albert, we need to talk about responsibility. There it was. The word he only used when Laya needed rescuing. Responsibility, I repeated. Rolled it around on my tongue. Funny. You only ever say that word at me, never for me. Mom touched my arm. Her hand was warm, familiar, a gesture that might have meant something once. Honey, she said. You know your sister's struggling. This money could stabilize things. Just temporarily. Temporarily had lasted my whole life. Laya slid a piece of folded paper across the table. I already drafted something, she said. Loan agreement. No lawyers. Family style. I stared at it. My name was misspelled. 1 letter off. Shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Even now, she couldn't see me clearly. Dad nodded. That seems reasonable. I didn't touch it. Instead, I pulled out my phone from my jacket. The case was chipped at the corner, another thing I never replaced because it still worked. I want to be clear, I said. You're asking me to fund Laya's life. Laya rolled her eyes. I'm asking for support. Then say support, I said. Not family. Not obligation. Silence. The fireworks outside faded. Just the wall clock now, ticking past midnight like a bomb too tired to explode. Dad's voice snapped. After everything we've done for you. I laughed. A single, surprised sound. Like a balloon deflating mid-flight. You didn't do this, I said. And that's the point. Laya's face hardened. If you walk away from this, she hissed, don't expect us to protect you when people find out. Protect me from what? I asked. Her smile came back, sharp as a scalpel. From what you really did to get that money. The accusation landed like a slap. And in that instant I knew she hadn't come to ask. She'd come to blackmail. The threat hung in the air, heavy as a storm. Mom gasped. Laya, she said, sharp for once. But Laya didn't flinch. She was watching me, waiting for guilt. For shame. For anything she could use. You're implying a crime, Dad said weakly. I'm implying questions, Laya corrected. The kind people ask when someone like him suddenly has that kind of money. Someone like him. The words weren't even subtle. I looked down at my phone. I didn't need to show it. Not yet. I didn't steal it, I said. Didn't inherit it. Didn't marry it. Laya tilted her head, smug. Then enlighten us. I met her eyes. I invested early, I said. I stayed quiet. I waited. Dad scoffed. In what? In a company you both laughed at 10 years ago, I said. When I asked for advice and you told me to be realistic. Mom winced. She remembered. Laya waved her hand. That doesn't get you this much. It does, I said, if you don't panic. She folded her arms. Prove it. And there it was. The shift. From family to jury. I unlocked my phone and slid it to the center of the table. Not close enough for them to touch, but enough for them to see. Legal documents. Dates. Signatures. Boring. Bulletproof. Dad leaned in. Mom blinked once, twice. Laya didn't move. Then she laughed. Too loud. Too sharp. Okay, she said. So you're rich. Her smile vanished. Then you can afford to lose some. And for the first time all night, I saw it, the real source of her rage. She wasn't angry I had money. She was furious that I had done it without her. Laya pushed the phone back toward me with one finger, like it disgusted her. You think paperwork makes you untouchable? She sneered. You think money makes you immune? No, I said calmly. It just makes me independent. Dad straightened his spine. His voice returned to that familiar, I'm still the head of this household tone. The one that only came out when someone needed to be put in their place. Laya's right. You don't understand how this looks. People see this kind of money, they ask questions. I understand exactly how it looks, I said. That's why I never told you. Mom looked pained. Albert, we just want to protect you. Protect me, I echoed. Like you did when I was couchsurfing after college while Laya's third business got a full family bailout? That's not fair, Mom said. It is fair, I said calmly. You just don't like how it sounds. Laya leaned forward again, her voice no longer loud, just sharp enough to cut. You really think you can just walk out of this room with everything, like you don't owe us anything? I think, I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket, that the only thing I ever owed you was the version of me that stayed quiet. Dad rubbed his temples. Can we please stop turning this into a spectacle? It is a spectacle. Laya snapped. He made it one. No, I said. You did. When you saw my name on documents you weren't meant to read. That hit her. Not just because it was true, but because it reminded everyone she had broken into my private accounts. Family doesn't hide wealth, Dad said again, trying to recover the moral high ground. Family doesn't weaponize guilt, I replied. But here we are. Laya crossed her arms. So what now? You just cut us off? No, I said. I just stopped letting you decide the terms. Mom looked at me, eyes glassy. We just want to understand why you didn't trust us. I did, I said. I trusted you to react exactly like this. That landed like a thud. Laya opened her mouth, then shut it again. She wasn't used to being outpaced. Dad gestured to the folded paper still on the table, the makeshift loan agreement. You won't even consider helping her? No, I said. Because helping Laya has always meant erasing myself. Silence. You think you're the victim here, Laya whispered. I'm not the victim, I said. I'm the result. I stood again. This time slower. Deliberate. My coat was still on the back of the chair. I didn't reach for it yet. Laya's voice dropped to something almost vulnerable. You're really going to choose money over family? No, I said. I'm choosing me. The money just came with me. For a long moment, no one moved. No accusations. No defenses. Just stillness. Then Laya picked up the cracked champagne flute. The one she mocked earlier. She held it like it was symbolic. And then she dropped it. The sound was sharp. Final. You break everything you touch, she said. I looked at the glass. Then back at her. I set it down, I said quietly. You're the one who broke it. Mom finally stood. Her hands shook. Albert, please. Just think about it. Come back tomorrow. We can talk. I nodded once. Not agreement. Closure. I put my coat on. Took my time. No one offered to help. At the door, I paused, not for them. For me. For the boy who once waited to be invited to belong. I turned. And said, I don't need to be understood. I just need to stop being undone. Then I walked out, and no one followed. Outside, the air hit like a truth I hadn't been able to say indoors. Cold, clean, and real. The street was quiet. The last of the fireworks had fizzled into smoke trails over the trees. A neighbor's porch light clicked off. My car sat at the curb where I left it, slightly crooked, like even it hadn't expected me to stay long. I didn't get in. Not right away. Instead, I stood there with my hand on the door handle, my breath fogging in front of me, the weight of the conversation still draped over my shoulders like a second coat I hadn't asked for. Behind me, the house was still lit up. That same old brightness. Artificial. Polished. You'd never know someone had tried to blackmail me in there 5 minutes ago. That's the thing about families like mine. They keep the curtains closed and the voices low, but the damage? That part's loud in the silences. I finally got in and shut the door. The car smelled faintly like cinnamon gum and old receipts. I hadn't cleaned it in months. No reason. Just busy. The leather was cold against my back. I didn't turn the engine over yet. Instead, I sat there gripping the wheel and thinking about all the times I'd made myself small so Laya could feel big. All the times Dad praised her for speaking up and called me thoughtful, like it was a polite way of saying invisible. All the times Mom had asked me to be the bridge, the buffer, the one who understood where everyone was coming from. Understanding them had cost me years. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. No messages. No missed calls. Not yet. They were probably still inside, regrouping. Spinning it. Finding the version of the story where I looked like the villain. That was always Laya's gift. She could cast herself as the hero and the wounded victim in the same sentence. I scrolled through old photos. I didn't even know why. Christmas 3 years ago, Laya opening a gift I bought and forgot to put my name on. She'd thanked Mom. A beach trip when I was 25, me holding a flat tire alone while Dad took Laya to get ice cream. The photo where I'd finally smiled too big and Mom said, "Tone it down, it's not your graduation." I closed the gallery. The engine turned over on the first try. Smooth. I didn't drive yet. Just let it idle. And that's when the first message came in. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. From Laya. Just one line. "You think this ends with the door slam?" I stared at it. Then typed back. "No. I think it ended years ago. You're just hearing the echo now." I didn't wait for her reply. I dropped the phone into the center console and shifted into drive. As I pulled away from the curb, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Not heroic. Not vengeful. Just free. The kind of free that doesn't come with fanfare. The kind that comes with finally saying no. I didn't go home. Home felt too final, too quiet. I wasn't ready for silence that thick. Instead, I drove. No destination. Just away. Away from the rosemary-scented house where forgiveness was always conditional. Away from Laya's voice, sharp and rehearsed. Away from the version of myself that still flinched when someone raised theirs. I passed the old hardware store where I worked summers in college. The diner where I'd pulled doubles while Laya found herself in Bali. Every street had a ghost version of me walking it, young, tired, hopeful, invisible. I ended up at the marina. It was empty, of course. Just rows of boats asleep under tarps and the sound of water lapping against wood. The cold had teeth down there, biting at my ears, my knuckles. I leaned against the railing and stared at nothing. And I let it happen. The weight. The crash of it. The grief for things I never had, uncomplicated love, unconditional trust, parents who looked at me and saw someone whole. Not just a backup. Not just a backup plan. I thought I'd feel triumphant tonight. Walking out. Standing up. Saying the truth out loud and leaving the mess behind like it didn't belong to me anymore. But what I felt was tired. Not regret. Just tired. Because that's the part no one tells you about choosing yourself. It's not glamorous. It's not a movie ending with swelling music and a well-lit apartment. It's parking lot quiet. Marina dark. Breath visible in the air like something escaping. And then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. Just 3 words. "Call me tomorrow." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just another little test. Would I reach back? Would I still make them feel safe? I didn't reply. I just watched the water and let the cold settle into my coat. For a long time, I blamed myself for the distance in our family. I thought maybe if I were louder, flashier, more Laya, maybe I'd have earned more than polite claps and backup roles. But I wasn't built to compete for love. I was built to earn it the hard way, with silence and patience. And now? Now I had the money. The independence. The quiet. And the bitter, liberating truth that they never expected me to win. Just to show up when needed. To pay, to applaud, to soften the blow when Laya stumbled again. I reached into my coat and pulled out that folded loan agreement. I hadn't taken it, but somehow it ended up there. Typed wrong. My name misspelled. I unfolded it slowly and stared at it in the dark. I didn't tear it. Didn't burn it. Didn't need to. I dropped it into the trash can beside the dock. and walked back to my car. The marina lights flickered behind me like they were watching. But I didn't look back. The next morning, the sunlight felt like it belonged to someone else. It was too bright, too soft, like it didn't understand what kind of night had come before it. I hadn't gone home. I'd slept, if you could call it that, in a cheap motel off Route 17 with a shower that screeched and a vending machine that only took singles without wrinkles. The place smelled like old carpet and industrial soap, but the bed was mine. The silence was mine. No one asked me for anything. That was enough. At 9:12 a.m., the phone rang. Not a text. A full call. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Not out of spite, but because I needed the delay. The buffer between expectation and response. A minute later it rang again. This time, Dad? That one I silenced. I wasn't ready to hear the voice that had once taught me how to ride a bike and somehow unlearned how to see me as his own person. Then came Laya. Of course. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail. No text. I finally listened. Her voice was clipped. Controlled. That carefully manicured version of concern she used when trying to sound like the bigger person. Hey. Just wanted to say last night got out of hand. Obviously, things were said that can't be unsaid. But I think we all need to breathe and talk about how to move forward as a family. There's a path here. If you're willing to take it. Call me. A path. That word echoed. Like it was something generous being offered to me. As if I hadn't already built my own goddamn road. I didn't call her back. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and opened the account. The account. The one they'd all seen in glimpses. Laya had only caught fragments before twisting it into something corrupt. It wasn't magic. Just time. Compound interest. Patience. And a very lucky bet on a startup that almost failed 3 times before becoming the backbone of half the payment systems in the country. I stared at the balance. 24 million, give or take a few $100,000 depending on the market. It still didn't feel real. And here's the kicker, it wasn't about the money. It was about what the money proved. That I was never the failure they quietly assumed I was. That their silence didn't define my worth. That I hadn't needed Laya's approval or Dad's reluctant praise to become someone. There was an email waiting from my lawyer. I opened it. A simple update, the final property transfer had cleared. The cabin was mine now. Fully. Remote, quiet, 3 hours north. No cell service unless you climbed a hill. Wood stove. Lake out back. It wasn't luxury. It was exit. I replied. Perfect. I'll be there next week. Then I picked up my phone again and, for the first time that morning, made a call. Not to my parents. Not to Laya. To Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Al? His voice was warm. Familiar. My friend since college. The only one who hadn't asked for anything last night. Just sent one text. You good? I'm thinking of disappearing for a bit. I said. He was quiet for a beat. Then, cabin? Cabin. You want company? And that's when I knew. There were still people in my life who didn't need a single dollar to stand beside me. Just space. And an invitation. Yeah. I said. I'd like that. And just like that, I started making room for people who didn't require proof to believe in me. The cabin was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just bigger now, in the ways that mattered. Not taller, not broader. Just unfolded. Not crouching into spaces that didn't fit me anymore. It took us 6 hours to get there, me and Marcus, in his truck, with the bed full of groceries and firewood, and the kind of silence that doesn't press down on you. He didn't ask questions. Just helped me carry things inside, took the smaller room without a word, and made coffee like we were still in college and broke and optimistic. The lake was frozen over. Wind sliced across it like it had something to prove. The place had no Wi-Fi, no TV, no sound but the wood groaning in the stove and the distant call of crows that didn't care about family drama. On the 3rd day, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name. Spelled correctly this time. Inside, a printout of a news article. Local entrepreneur builds fortune through silent stake in fintech giant. I stared at the headline, heart in my throat. They knew. Laya must have sent it. Or maybe Dad. Didn't matter. Below the headline, someone had scribbled in pen. If this leaks, we both lose. That was it. No signature. No context. Not a threat. A reminder. They still thought I had something to protect. I showed Marcus. He read it, then folded it back up slowly. They think you're scared. I'm not, I said. And for the first time, it was true. I could have called my lawyer. I could have sent a warning back. Instead, I threw the letter into the fire. It curled in on itself like all things do when you stop feeding them oxygen. That night, Marcus made chili and I chopped firewood just to feel something break under my hands that wasn't me. We sat on the porch in silence, wrapped in blankets, watching our breath fog in the moonlight. And then he asked the one question I hadn't heard since the night everything cracked. You okay? And this time, I didn't dodge it. I didn't change the subject. I didn't smile and say, yeah, just to keep things smooth. I looked at the lake. Frozen. Still. I looked at the sky. Quiet. I looked at my life, finally mine, not being rented out for other people's needs. And I said, I'm getting there. Not healed. Not whole. But free. I slept hard that night. The kind of sleep you only get after a long war where you finally realize the enemy was your own silence. The next morning, I took a walk up the ridge behind the cabin. No service up there either, just sky and snow and breath. At the top, I pulled out my phone. There was one bar. Barely. Enough to get the text that had queued up in the background. 10 messages. 3 from Dad. 2 from Mom. 5 from Laya. All different shades of the same color. We're worried. We should talk. You're being unfair. This isn't how families work. We need to fix this. I didn't reply. I didn't delete them either. I just stood there with the wind in my ears, the snow crunching under my boots, and the soft, fierce knowledge that not everything needs a response. Some things just need distance. A week passed. Then 2. No more letters came. No surprise visits. The texts stopped trickling in by day 5. Either they'd gotten the message, or they were regrouping, waiting for a better angle. I didn't care. Out here, time passed differently. I chopped wood. Cooked actual meals. Read books I'd bought 5 years ago and never cracked open. Marcus stayed for a while, then headed back to the city when work called. He offered to stay longer. I told him no, and meant it. Not because I didn't want him there, but because I finally believed I could be on my own and not lonely. Most nights, I sat on the porch with a mug of something warm and listened to the wind tear through the trees like it had nothing to apologize for. And somewhere in that quiet, I started writing again. Not a novel. Not a memoir. Just thoughts. Observations. Things I hadn't said out loud, even to myself. Like this. Just because they raised you doesn't mean they built you. Or this. Being chosen is not the same as being seen. I hadn't realized how much of myself had gone unwritten. Hidden behind family group texts and polite responses. Behind I'm fines and it's nothings. But here, with no one watching, I got to be the narrator again. It wasn't until day 15 that I heard a knock. It startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one had the address. Not even Marcus. I opened the door slowly. It was my mother. Bundled in a coat too big for her, snow on her boots, eyes rimmed red. Not from tears. From wind, maybe? From reality. Hi, she said. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I called, she said quietly. When you didn't answer, I found the cabin information in your old tax files. I know I shouldn't have. She trailed off. I stepped aside. Not because I forgave her. Because the cold was brutal and I wasn't heartless. She came in like someone entering a chapel. Slowly. Cautiously. She didn't sit. Neither did I. We stood in the narrow living room, surrounded by the silence I'd earned. I came alone, she said. I nodded. Your father doesn't know I'm here. And Laya. Her voice faltered. Laya's already rewriting the story, I said. She gave a sad smile. She's always been good at that. We stood there for a long moment, years folding between us like thin sheets of paper. Then she said the thing I hadn't realized I'd been waiting to hear. I saw what you built. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The wind rattled the windows gently. Like the house was listening, too. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. But because I was full. Of sadness. Of relief. Of something I hadn't felt since I was 15, packing lunches while Laya got rides to school. Scene. I didn't come to fix anything, she said. I came to say I was wrong. That landed. Not a band-aid. Not a condition. Just the truth. You said once that we protected Laya more than we protected you, she added. I didn't correct her. I'd never said that out loud. She looked around the room. The wood stove. The books. My life, pared down to only the things that made sense. You built all this, she whispered. And I still expected you to hand it over. I finally spoke. You didn't fail me, I said. You just taught me how to survive without you. She nodded. Her eyes welled up. But she didn't cry. Not fully. And that's how I knew this wasn't about guilt. This was grief. For the boy she could have loved better. And the man she no longer recognized as hers to direct. Can I hug you? She asked, voice trembling. I hesitated. Then nodded. Just once. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in years, I didn't brace myself. Because this time, I wasn't shrinking to fit the shape of someone else's love. She left after an hour. No dramatics. No lingering. Just a quiet, thank you, at the door and a look that held more than she could say aloud. I didn't promise to visit. She didn't ask. It felt like we both finally realized what kind of story we were in, one where love didn't always equal proximity. After she left, I stood outside for a long while, watching her car vanish down the snowy road, leaving no tracks that would last more than a day. The sun was setting over the ridge, casting long orange streaks across the frozen lake. I breathed in deep. Cold air. Clean air. No performance. Then I heard it. A soft buzz in the cabin. A new voicemail. I stepped back inside, boots crunching against the threshold, and checked. Not Mom. Not Dad. Laya. One message. Sent 5 minutes after Mom arrived. She knew. I hesitated. Then pressed play. You think this makes you noble? Letting her come out there and cry while you sit on your throne like some guru of emotional clarity. You think you won? You think you're the good guy? You're not. You're just the one who got lucky early and mistook it for virtue. Don't think this is over. It never is with family. Click. That was it. No apology. No reaching. Just venom polished into prose. Her specialty. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time. And then I did something that shocked even me. I laughed. Not bitterly. Not angrily. Just, honestly. Because she still didn't get it. This wasn't about winning. It wasn't about being the good guy, or the rich guy, or the guy who got the last word. It was about being done with the game altogether. I put the phone down. Didn't delete the message. Didn't respond. I made tea. Turned on music. Something instrumental, slow, unbothered. I sat by the stove and pulled out my notebook, the one I'd started a week ago with those lines about being chosen versus being seen. I added a new one. You can love someone and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still not go back. I stared at that line for a while. Then I wrote it again, slower. Because I knew the next part of my life would be about practicing it. Not just saying it. Not just surviving. Living it. And letting it be true. The voicemail sat in my phone like an unopened letter from a war I'd already walked away from. I didn't replay it. Didn't let her voice back into the quiet I'd carved out here. Instead, I picked up the notebook again. The one where I'd been writing, not for publication, not for performance. Just for myself. Sentences I didn't have to shrink. Pages where I didn't have to fight for space. I added a new line. Healing isn't something they'll witness. It's something they'll resent when it no longer includes them. That one came fast. Easy. Like it had been waiting. Later that afternoon, Marcus called. No preamble. You still alive out there? Barely. I said. Think I've officially become a guy who names the crows in his yard. That tracks. There was a pause. Then, so, she really showed up? I didn't have to ask who he meant. Yeah. I said. Just her. And she owned it. For once. Quietly. Damn, he said. Did it help? I didn't answer right away. I think it helped her, I said finally. Which might be all it needed to do. Marcus didn't push. That was his gift. He could carry silence like some people carry tools, useful, never wasted. Laya called me too, he said after a moment. That made me sit up. What? Last week. Before she showed up at your place. She asked me to talk to you. Said you weren't seeing things clearly. And I told her the truth, he said. That you've never seen things clearer. That hit harder than I expected. It's wild how long it takes to learn that some people will stand beside you even when the spotlight isn't flattering. Thanks, I said. I got your back, he said, then added. Always. Even when you start writing poetry about snow and cutting your own hair. I laughed. Already did both. I'm hanging up. But he didn't. Not yet. Before he ended the call, he added one more thing. I'm proud of you, man. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there with that sentence echoing louder than anything I'd heard in years. Not because no one had said it before, but because this time, it wasn't tied to usefulness. To what I'd done for someone else. It was just for being. That night, the first real snowstorm rolled in. Thick flakes. Heavy silence. The kind of storm that erases roads and clears everything else. I made a fire, pulled on a sweater, and sat by the window watching the world get rewritten in white. I thought about the loan agreement. The crack in the champagne glass. The last family dinner where I was both ghost and villain depending on who was talking. And I thought, they'll spin their story. But I get to keep mine. I added one last line to the notebook before bed. They don't have to understand. You just have to keep walking. And then I slept. Unbothered. Unhaunted. Uninvited. And perfectly fine with it. The storm lasted 2 days. By the time it ended, the whole world looked untouched. Like someone had hit reset and covered the past with a fresh, silent coat of indifference. No tire tracks. No footprints. Just possibility. On the third morning, I opened the front door to find a package on the porch. Wrapped neatly. No return label. It wasn't from a delivery service. Someone had been here. I brought it inside, dusted off the snow, and set it on the kitchen table. Stared at it like it might explode. Eventually, I opened it. Inside, a photo album. Old school. Leather-bound. Heavy. The first page held a note, taped in crookedly. I recognized the handwriting instantly, my father's. Thought you should have this. Or maybe we just couldn't carry it anymore. No greeting. No name. Just that. I sat down. And turned the page. Me, age 4, in a Batman costume made out of black trash bags. Laya in the background, dressed as a princess, already annoyed the camera wasn't on her. Flip. Me again. This time at 10. Covered in dirt after a soccer game. Dad's handwriting underneath. Didn't score, still proud. First time I'd ever seen those words. Flip. A family vacation I barely remembered. Laya on the jet ski, me on the dock holding the rope. Not in the water. Not in motion. Just holding steady. That was my whole role right there. In a single snapshot. Flip. High school graduation. Laya front and center, even though it wasn't her day. I was half out of frame. Flip. College. One photo. Me holding a duffel bag in front of a dorm, smiling like I was already bracing for the loneliness. Dad captioned it. Didn't cry. That made one of us. That stopped me. I stared at those words for a long time. He never said that out loud. Not once. But there it was. Written down. Stored. Preserved. Buried. There were no photos of the bad years. The lean years. The sleepless nights in my car. But I didn't expect those. No one documents your hardest moments unless they're using them later. Still, something about this book felt different. Like maybe, just maybe, they'd started looking back and seeing what they missed. Not rewriting it. Just facing it. At the very back of the album, tucked behind the last page, was a folded scrap of paper. Smaller handwriting. Moms. We didn't know how to love you without conditions. That's not your fault. We're trying. I folded the note and placed it back exactly where I found it. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I didn't need it to be louder. They had said what they could. In their own limited way. And I had stopped waiting for their love to come in a shape that fit me. I closed the album. Pushed it to the edge of the table. Looked around my small cabin with its firewood smell and crooked window frames. This was mine. Not because I'd earned it through suffering. But because I had finally stopped giving it away. I didn't call them. Didn't text. Didn't fall back into the orbit of people who only reached out when I became valuable. The album didn't fix anything. But it didn't hurt either. It just reminded me that even if the past was flawed, the present was mine to decide. The next Sunday, I went into town. Not for anything big, just groceries and a haircut from the one barbershop still using cash and conversation. It had been nearly a month since I'd left the city. Since the night my sister slammed a champagne glass into the past and demanded I pay for the mess. The town was small, quiet, and beautifully indifferent to who I was. No one cared about net worth. No one asked how much I'd made. The cashier at the co-op asked if I wanted a loyalty card, and when I said no, she smiled like I'd just told her a good joke. I liked it here. I was nobody here. And for the first time in my life, that felt like power. At the barbershop, the old guy, Eddie, asked how I wanted it cut. I told him. Short, honest, and low maintenance. He grinned like he got the joke. He didn't ask what I did for a living. Didn't ask where I was from. He just worked. Halfway through, he asked, "Got plans tonight?" I shrugged. "Fire. Book. Maybe whiskey." "Sounds like peace," he said. "Trying to get used to it," I replied. Afterward, I wandered the bookstore down the street. The kind with creaky floors and handwritten shelf labels. I picked up a novel I hadn't seen since college, one I used to read in secret because Laya called it emo boy garbage. I bought it anyway. Back at the cabin, the sky was threatening snow again. I made tea. I lit the fire. I read the book cover to cover in one sitting, and when it ended, I felt more than I had after the stock hit its highest valuation. Not because the book was profound, but because I had the space to finish it without interruption, without guilt. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It had shape, texture, warmth. That night, I heard from Marcus again. A text this time. "How's your fortress of solitude?" I wrote back. "Cold. Quiet. Absolutely perfect." He replied with a meme of a raccoon in a blanket. I laughed. Out loud. Alone. And not lonely. Then, before bed, I checked the album again. Not because I needed to, but because I could. I flipped through quickly, stopping at that photo of me on the dorm steps, duffel bag slung over my shoulder. Smiling at the future like I had no idea it would take a decade of hurt to stop waiting for someone to tell me I'd done okay. I closed the book. And finally, I did something that surprised me. I added a photo of my own. Printed it on my old wireless printer from a week ago, me on the porch, holding a mug of coffee, lake behind me, hair too long before Eddie fixed it. I slid it into the last page. Underneath I wrote, "January year 1. No explanation. No apology. Just a mark that I'd been here. That I'd made it. That I chose to stay." February came in slow. The kind of slow where you forget what day it is and don't mind. Snow softened the world until time felt optional. The cabin became less of a retreat and more of a rhythm. Chop, boil, read, write, breathe. I built a shelf. Badly. It leaned a little to the left and refused to hold anything heavier than a paperback, but I didn't fix it. It was imperfect and functional, and no one else would ever criticize it. One morning, I walked the frozen edge of the lake and found an old rowboat half buried in the snow. It had no oars, no name, no clear path back to whoever left it. I sat in it anyway. Let the silence cradle me like it meant something. I started writing letters. Not to send. Just to say the things I never had space to say. One for Dad. "You taught me to work hard but only rewarded who shouted loudest. I never wanted more than your respect. I stopped needing it the day I earned my own." One for Laya. "I hope you succeed. Truly. Because I need your happiness to stop requiring my failure." One for Mom. "I forgive you. For the silences. For the almosts. For loving us unequally and calling it balance. I know now you did your best with what you had. And I'm finally doing the same." And one for me. Just 2 lines. "You're not a villain for choosing peace. You're not selfish for no longer bleeding on their behalf." I sealed each one and tucked them into a carved wooden box I found at a thrift store in town. Not to burn. Not to send. Just to hold. There's something holy about holding your own truth without demanding others carry it. I was in the middle of chopping kindling when a car pulled up the drive. It wasn't family. It was a courier. He handed me a flat, sealed envelope and asked for a signature. I signed without asking questions. The envelope had weight. Not physical. Emotional. Like it had been written in capital letters in bad faith. I opened it inside. Inside, legal documents. From Laya. She was suing me. Not for the money. Not directly. For emotional distress tied to financial withholding. There was a letter attached. From her lawyer. Your client's failure to disclose material financial gains caused ongoing harm to Ms. Keller, who suffered familial estrangement, reputational damage, and emotional instability. It read like a stunt. Because that's exactly what it was. Not a lawsuit she expected to win. Just a message. If you won't give it, I'll take it. I laughed. Loud. Tired. And honest. Then I called my lawyer. Told him to handle it. Told him not to call back unless there was fire. I hung up. Tossed the documents on the shelf I'd built. The one that leaned left and didn't quite hold its weight. It didn't matter. Because neither did her threats. Not anymore. Laya's lawsuit never made it to court. My lawyer sent one letter and it folded. Quietly. Like most bullies when no one flinches. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't post. Didn't brag. I just made tea. Fed the fire. Sat by the lake. The silence didn't feel empty anymore, it felt earned. I wasn't waiting to be forgiven or invited back. I wasn't proving anything. I was just living. And for the first time, that was more than enough.